Hey guys, welcome back. We have some bad news. We have some stuff to be on the lookout for, and thank you very much to Bean from Discord, from the Rattle Pokemon Discord. Join the Discord if you're not in the Discord already. We have some concerning examples here, and yes, we have action being taken again by Fanatics. Is this going to be a recurring theme? Are we going to praise Fanatics over and over again? Because they seem to be doing the right thing. This is extremely refreshing to provide information to a company like this, and they actually take action. So the Vaporeon on the screen here, as being pointed out in the Discord, is it's looking a whole lot like it's trimmed. It's looking like it doesn't fit in the case anymore. This is something that should have been picked up by the grading company, by PSA. I informed both PSA and I informed Fanatics that this is a card that is concerning. Now, is it concerning because of the person that submitted this card to Fanatics? Maybe, maybe not. We're not sure. We don't know. More concerning is whoever sent this in for grading, and I guess extra concerning is the fact that this passed through the grading company. So we've seen something like this before. Let's take a quick little look at it here. We'll give it a little zoom in. And yes, the most important part of the video today. This is not like a scare tactic, but this is something you need to be on the lookout for. I have people ask me all the time, hey, if it's PSA graded, if it's graded by XYZ LMNOP grading, should I just blindly trust it? And the answer is no, you shouldn't. And the most dangerous part of this whole thing, maybe not with this case, because you're probably not cracking out at 10, but if you bought a card that was trimmed like this, allegedly trimmed like this, you could be in a whole lot of trouble. Because if you crack this thing out, guess what? PSA is going to say, oh, too bad. So sad. You cracked it out of the case. We don't know if it's the same card or not. We can't photo match that. So you do need to be careful. Be on the lookout for this when you're shopping for it. But also if you end up receiving a card like this, you should be able to, even though you're probably going to have to fight for it, able to get a guarantee, a PSA guarantee. They do not like to pay out on it. It's usually a struggle to get it. But in this example here, I think this is pretty telling. This is at least bare minimum. If PSA wants to pretend that this is not trimmed, if they want to pretend, hey, we got to give it the benefit of the doubt here, they should at least be accepting this card back or requesting this card be sent back to them so they can take measurements on it. So, I mean, I guess in some planet, in some world, in some situation, we can pretend that, okay, maybe the case was made a little bit large and the card was made a little bit. The cards are very consistently the same size. Yes, the corners can look a little bit different. Yes, the centering can be a little bit different, but the size of the card itself, it does not. It is very, very consistent. Now, we can see here, we got a giant gaping gap at the top, and we have a pretty significant gap down the left-hand side. The card also looks like it is a little skewed. Sometimes a card can be shifted at an angle, but this looks like it is not on one side and it is on the other. So, to me, my opinion on this one here, again, I don't have it in person. I'm not a grading company. I'm not charging you to give my opinion on this. In my opinion, this is a trimmed card. It is very concerning. Now, we don't know. The grading company knows who submit this card, and if they submit other cards that were trimmed, much like the example that we took a look at. If you haven't watched these videos here, the ones with the trimmed Charizard, again, allegedly trimmed. In my opinion, this is very trimmed. Swolpoke did a little post on that. We took a look into it, and it turns out that it seems to link back to a couple of sports card trimmers, Mr. Kevin Burge and Keith Koenig. Surprise, surprise. And we could take a look at that submission. We're going to take a look at the other cards that are within the same submission. It's seemingly a submission of only 3 Pokemon cards. Could it lead back to these guys? We don't know. Again, I did talk to PWCC/Fanatics, and they informed me that this is not linked to the same person that submit the Charizard, but the Charizard was also sold a few times. It seems like the original owner of the card. So this is where it gets kind of pushed down the line, and then it becomes a problem for someone else, and it becomes more and more difficult, maybe becomes more and more expensive for PSA to rectify the issue. Now, it doesn't seem, I have not heard back from them. I do not know if they're going to rectify the issue, if they're going to do something about this, if they're going to pay out whoever purchased this thing last, which is, it's kind of what needs to happen. It's their mistake. They need to own it. If you want to have a guarantee, and if you want an upcharge for that guarantee, then you need to have a wrap on this stuff. I get it. It's going to cost the company money, so they're going to avoid it, I guess. They're going to push it off. It probably doesn't look good on their numbers when they have to report back to anyone on it and say, hey, what What's going on here? Why did we pay out so much? But again, you shouldn't have a guarantee. You shouldn't have a grading company if you can't stand behind the fact that like this is something that could have easily. The fact that they're not even measuring the cards, that they're not holding it up. You could have an energy on each in one of these employees' desks. Then all they have to do is put that card on top of the energy and see if it's the same size. If it's visibly not, clearly someone was trimming off some damage. All right. Enough of that. We had the Charizard in question here. You can see the bottom is just wonky as all hell. You can see the gap within the case itself. Pretty much the same situation that we're dealing with now, except the Vaporeon in question was graded very recently. So maybe it's not the same guys. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I guess only PSA will be able to tell that. But with a nice little overlay here, we can see Kiki Jiki from the Discord did this nice little overlay for me, and you can see here that there is clearly just a large chunk of the bottom of the card missing, and there was probably damage down there, so they trimmed it off. And whoop-de-doo, you got a $240,000 mistake. That is a big mistake. The Vaporeon, not so much. The Vaporeon was at about $8,000, I believe, somewhere in around $8,000. And Fanatics, good job, 10 out of 10, taking action. I sent them a message. I said, hey, this is concerning. Look at this. And again, it's not necessarily the person that submitted, but if they got it from somebody that trimmed it, if they got it from somebody that got it from somebody that trimmed it and submitted it to PSA, it's got to be traced back. And these companies need to be doing what's in your best interest. Are they going to get praise from anyone other than me? Maybe, maybe not. But this is the kind of thing that you should be holding. This is the kind of thing that you should be wanting. All the people that are like, oh, the community, do everything good for the community. This is what's good for the community, the hobby in general, for collectors in general, to come together and crack down on this stuff and put that expectation on these companies. I don't care if PSA makes mistakes. I do care if PSA just ignores the mistakes that were made, and they don't do right by the people that now own these cards or will own these cards in the future. Because if they don't do anything about it, we'll also have to get TiffanyCards.com, Tiffany Cards on the Twitter to add these to the concerning items list, trimmed cards list, so that you probably want to check those beforehand. But again, use your eyes. Make sure you know more than the grading company. Do not blindly rely on the grading company. Now, thank you, anyone and everyone that has been using the discount codes. Your Trolling Toad, 5% off. You guys have been absolutely knocking it out of the park with that. Thank you very much. Card Market, there's no requirement here, but if you're in Europe, you probably want to be shopping on Card Market anyway. If you're not from Europe, you probably want a friend in Europe who can forward some stuff to you. It's an awesome place to do so. We got Securus Card Shop. We got all kinds of places that if you're shopping for anything anyway, click on there before you shop and support the channel at no additional cost to yourself. It goes a long way, because you know what? We gotta cover stuff. We gotta go into ridiculous detail on all of this information. It's not necessarily the most consumable content. It's not Hype Dogger 69. Oh my god, I pulled a Charizard out of my butthole. It is long, it's drawn out, but it needs to be. It's important. Thank you to everyone that shares it. Thank you to everyone that watches it. And you know what? When we cover scammer whammers, they're going to false flag the videos. It impacts the videos. If we got to re-upload the videos, it hurts the channel quite a bit. But it's okay. You guys have my back. We're going to do what's right no matter what. And that's the theme here. So, Fanatics Collect. They've had a little bit of struggles here recently with the switch over from PWCC to Fanatics Collect. Highly recommend you guys, if you're looking for best value, auctions. You still need to be careful what you're buying, what you're looking at. And again, thank you very much to Bean for being on the lookout. I did not see this. There's a ton of listings. So when there is something that's wrong with anything like this, it's important that we bring this. So if you want to bring it to my attention, if you want to bring it to the attention of Fanatics, or both, is probably even best. If there's something urgent like this, where something's up for auction, and it's easier to kind of fix the issue before it sells to somebody else, and then you got to go through, find out who got it, and then if they sold it to someone. Better to fix these issues. I know PSA might not necessarily want to fix all the issues that are brought to them out all at once, because it's going to cost them money, and this is probably going to cost them some money. But we have the card in question. And we'll take a look at examples where this should be filled out almost entirely. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of gap, especially if it's wedged into one of the sides here. But there should never be a gap this large, no matter how far it is jammed down at the bottom. And then the fact that it kind of gives a little wavy, it's kind of a little bit different in distance. It is kind of tilted a little bit, but there is just an excess of concerning empty space in here around the card. And this is something to look for. Maybe this is a good thing that the cases are pretty consistent in terms of size. Now there are going to be slight manufacturing changes and everything else, but the sheer gap here, we're lucky. We are very lucky in Pokemon cards that the cards are a consistent size, that the cards have rounded corners. So when you see something weird going on with the corners, sometimes weird things happen with the corners, but the size of the card, first edition stamps, there's certain aspects that are extremely consistent, and we're not seeing that here. We're seeing this is an issue. It was an issue. It was graded recently, and something that's $8,000 that you're sending into PSA, they should be looking a whole lot more closely at this. There's no excuse for something to be the wrong size, to be cut. There's a trimmed Pokemon card, especially if you have it in your hands, in person, when there's this much of the card missing, allegedly, that's a cause for concern. And even if PSA wants to double check their work, if they want to bring this back in, it should be easy enough for them to flag this, put on the thing, temporarily deactivated, please submit to us for review, and then do what you got to do. That easy, super easy. And we got some sales data. The PSA 10 is very expensive. I would imagine that this bad boy is probably pretty hard to grade. I mean, jungle in general, the edges happen to be pretty bad. So I had some dull blades at the old factory, so you got silvering, just straight out of the pack most of the time. Your jungle stuff. I don't know, first edition versus the unlimited stuff, if one was better than the other, but essentially a lot of that older WotC stuff after base set, for whatever reason, the blades were seemingly dull. So here it is in all its glory. It's still active on the old PSA website. You can see here the cert number in question. Again, super recent. I don't know if anyone has a date approximation on this bad boy. I know they like to jump around a little bit, but I would think that most of the 9 certs were very recent. Here we have it, blown up, just in case we want to, again, we can go in and we can take a look. That's the thing too with the PWCC auctions. If there's ever like debris on the case or anything like that, because they're scanning a ton of cards, you can go in, you can type in the cert number on PSA or on CGC or wherever else if you want to get a second look to see if something's damaged or if it's dust or debris or hairs or pubes or mayonnaise or whatever on the case. Scratches on the case versus scratches on the card. It's good to get multiple angles. This is looking like it's got some scratches on the holographic itself. So even disregarding the trim, this is not looking like a spectacular example, unless this is on the case. Sometimes it's hard to tell. I'm going to go ahead and assume that a lot of those scratches are on the holo itself. So probably not one we want to pick up. That's the thing too. So when people say buy the card, not the grade, even if you want a certain grade, even if you want a 10, make sure it looks like a 10, or that you're paying accordingly. If that's what gets you a stroke in, is the fact that it says 10 on it and you're okay with the fact that it's damaged, just realize that if you send it back in, it's probably not getting a 10 again. I mean, if you send anything in enough, shout out to the PSA 10 illustrator, it's probably going to come back in a higher grade. Someone's going to mess up eventually. It's just a matter of time. So we have a comparison example here. We have a PSA 7, and I just wanted to get a first edition Vaporeon from the jungle set. It is a 7, so ignore the fact that it is, I mean, it kind of looks like it might be in the same condition as the 10 that was there, but also the fact that it is filling out the case. So if we take a look here at the 7 in question, sometimes the corners are a little bit different depending on how it is, where it is, the centering on it, how it was cut. But you can see here it fills almost the entirety. Left to right, it is filling bar to bar. Now, if it sits a little bit farther within one of these bars here, you might see that there is a slight gap. You see that there's a slight gap at the top, but down at the bottom here, you can see that it's kind of going right into this little, I don't know what you want to call these little holder, little sidebar things. The bottom bar is essentially has the card inside it. and at the top you have barely a gap. So you can see here that this card, this example here, it doesn't look like it's trimmed. You do see some nice silvering along the outside edge of it. So I guess that leads us to our theory here, where that might have been trimmed off. Our right side looks pretty good. It's looking very similar. It's got the same kind of hollow scratches. Again, it's got a lot of bare hollow foil. So a lot of that it can come straight from the factory when they're sliding the sheets around, when they're cutting the sheets, when they're doing the things with the sheets. There can be little scratches on there. But also the foil edge here that's exposed, it probably came straight out of the pack like that. That's just part of the game back then. Now, before we go, I'm going to show you guys the other two cards that were on this submission, and you guys let me know. I guess we can show an overlay too. Maybe let's show the overlays first. We got the overlay here. This was done by Bean in the Discord, and you can see here just the amount of card that is missing with the two different examples. There's a lot of card missing there. Now the corners, yes, they can be more rounded, not rounded. If there's a bad corner, it's definitely a sign that something weird's going on. But more concerning is the fact that there is a significant chunk of this card that is missing. Now, whether they trimmed one side, both sides, all the silvering off the outside edges of this, I still don't think it should have got a 10. But regardless, even if they improved the grade, even if they brought it up to a 9 from a 7, this is a big deal. There's a lot of money at stake here, and yes, if it's $8,000 on this card, and if it's $240,000 on the Charizard, I think the Charizard was less expensive back when it was originally submit, but this is in recent times here. So you can be printing some serious money here because of the carelessness of the grading company themselves. And this is why you need to be the expert. Now, on that same submission, with the Vaporeon in question, we also have this Gengar. Again, it's fossil. It's very consistent. Let's open a new tab here, and we can give it a little zoomerini. So it looks like we got a giant gap on the left-hand side. So it looks like we also, in my opinion, allegedly have another trimmed card. And there's a giant gap at the bottom. So this is probably another of the same examples where they're trimming off the card. They're re-cornering the corners in order to make it look like it isn't anything going on. But once again, same submission. This is the card. This is the card right before, I believe. Right before, yeah, 47. I think it was 48 on the Vaporeon. The card right afterwards is also appearing like it is trimmed. And again, this is where PSA needs to do something about this. They need to seriously look into whoever submit these cards. Now, whether this person could have purchased these cards, they're already trimmed, and they submit them, and PSA didn't catch it, and, they got screwed over. And if they did that, if they purchased these cards raw, PSA is probably only going to return their grading fees, even if they were the ones that got screwed over by whoever sent it to them. So if you were the person that submit these cards and you got screwed over, please reach out to me. I would love to hear where you obtained these cards, and hopefully we can trace them back to whoever did this. Allegedly, again. This is something that should have been diagnosed, should have been discovered by the grading company themselves. Very easy to do so. Measuring the card is probably the easiest of all steps, especially when you go to put this in the case and it's bouncing around. It's all over the place because there's giant gaps in between. Last but not least, we have the one after it, the 48. So we have 47, the Gengar. We have 48, the Vaporeon, and then we have 49, the Japanese promo Lugia EX. And this one doesn't look as bad in terms of spacing, but there's still, no, I take that back. There's still quite a bit of space on the top there. Could have been trimmed off as well. And now where somebody's trimming this, potentially where anyone's trimming any of these cards, with the vintage WotC stuff, if they're silvering, they might want to get rid of that. But also if there is whitening on the edges, whether it's top, sides, both, they could be potentially trying to trim that damage off, usually on the back side, where you have the blue or where you have any of these other colors. Yeah, this is looking real bad on the back. Could be some whitening on the edges here that they were trying to remove. And again, this is something that at bare minimum needs to be reviewed by PSA. And they need to sort out who's sending this stuff in. And this is why it's important that these companies work together. Tons of times with the consignment stuff, you're going to have people that are trying to disguise the fact that it's them submitting or them selling this stuff over and over again. They try to make the trail a little bit more difficult because the companies don't want to disclose who's doing this stuff. But the problem with that is it's just a giant gateway, a giant avenue for people to sell cards that have been altered, sell cards that have been trimmed, whether it's trimmed or polished or anything of the sort. It's just not, it's not good. Same with the stuff that that Fanatics no longer sells, recently making the policy that they don't sell the autograph only authentication because a ton of people, maybe not a ton of people, but select people seem to have been abusing that, and having signed cards, signed counterfeit cards encapsulated, and the average collector can't tell, and it's not disclosed or it's not clear on the label itself that, hey, this is counterfeit. And then people want to trust the grading company because that's essentially their role in the collectible sphere, is the fact that they tell you what's real, they tell you what condition it is, it's third-party opinion, so that you don't have to be the expert. But when it's an important or a significant amount of money to you, you need to be the expert, and we've seen it time and time again. Hopefully this is helpful. Guys, not everything in existence is trimmed, not everything in existence is altered or anything like that. The vast majority of the time, if you're getting something that's graded, you still need to be on the lookout for fake cases, for fake cards inside cases that were misgraded, wrongly graded, counterfeits that shouldn't have been graded that got slipped by, stuff that is unlicensed material that the grading company just wanted to soak some grading fees and grade it regardless. All of that stuff. There are many pitfalls, and we cover all of them. We try to spread the awareness on this because this is not like a, oh, the market is dying kind of thing. This is just more important that people work together to call out and to prevent this stuff from happening, because if everyone works against the bad actors are going to have a very hard time of getting away with, the rampant, it's just countless examples of fraud. Where there's money, there's fraud. It's going to happen. So together, well, let's at least make it more difficult for them to take advantage of others. Look out for each other out there. Join the Discord. If you have any questions about authenticity, if you see anything else that's questionable, bring it to my attention. You don't have to donate to do so or anything like that. General chat. If something is urgent, if there's an auction for an item that is questionable, general chat. Give me the old @ in the Discord general chat, and I'll do my best to get to it sooner rather than later. My DMs are an absolute disaster, so if I don't get to those, that's why, and why it's always best to just the Discord general chat if it's urgent. If it's not, if it's just hey, how's it going, that's fine. But all right, enough rambling. Thanks for tuning in. Be careful out there, guys. There are pitfalls. There are bad people. The vast majority of people are good people, are trying to do the right thing, are trying to enjoy the hobby, and fuck the people that aren't.